Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm James Ferrigno, your host, and our guest today is Chris Daly, former San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, James, good to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. So, you spent some time in San Francisco politics. When you look back at it now, what stands out the most for you?
It's a good question. It was a long time ago, which we were kind of chit-chatting about before hitting record here. Uh, that's the thing that stands out. Obviously, San Francisco
Hmm.
politics and politicians are forefront in the news, the national and you know uh, news as well. With the last Democratic nominee for vice president being Kamala Harris, and Governor Gavin Newsom, former mayor and former supervisor who used to sit next to me back in the early 2000s on the board, possibly, running for president. So, you know, San Francisco politics and politicians are out there, and, people are aware of it. But when I look back to the city, I obviously think about, you know, my years there, which are some of my best years. When I was on the board of supervisors, I got married, I had two kids, and was a part of a righteous fight to try and save the soul of San Francisco. So decades before kind of the national political issue was affordability, the issue in San Francisco was affordability. And,
Hmm.
as a 20 something kid who had just moved to San Francisco, I had a very strong passion and sort of inclination towards working for social and economic justice, racial justice, and living and kind of working in the Mission District when that first .com thing was happening in the '90s. Just a lot of families and small businesses, nonprofits were getting pushed out. Folks
Hmm.
that I knew and cared about, and so we banded together and push back against that. And so I think now with sort of the AI boom, there's sort of the third or fourth, whatever iteration of, the tech push in San Francisco. I certainly look back to my years in the city in some righteous fights. I'm proud
Hmm.
of the work that we did, even though, if you look at the trajectory or the arc of it, a lot of really good special things in San Francisco, probably have been lost for good. A lot of the diversity, um, a lot of the working class elements of the city. We fought to save, and I think we prolonged it. But the large economic forces and political forces that come with them, they're strong, and it's hard to hold that levy with those forces. But, James, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I don't even know if I
Yeah.
answered your question, but
Yeah, I think you did. With San Francisco in particular, it's one of those cities that it's really affected by federal forces. So it's kind of be challenging to be local in a place that's, you know, they're paying attention to it. It's not, you can't go under the radar.
yeah, I mean, I will say
So,
there is this tradition in San Francisco of resistance, and so I remember even as a 20 something, kind of getting involved in community organizing and that level of politics. We knew about the folks in the '60s and '70s that fought against the uh, you know they called it the Manhattanization of San Francisco. I mean, some of your viewers probably remember the San Francisco Bay Guardian, which highlighted that issue weekly in
yeah.
the city. And so, that was around. We knew about the fights for rent control in the '70s, right? So there were people that came before. Obviously, the world knows of Harvey Milk,
Hmm.
and a lot of the inspirational, struggle and resistance that makes up the vibrant history of San Francisco. And you look back, like, before you know, uh, folks that are around now, but you have,
Mhm.
the Great General Strike in the 30s, the Longshore Union, and all of that. So there was a exceptionally rich labor and community kind of resistance and history of struggle in the city, that it's easy to kind of plug into, and attempt to
Mhm.
build on. So my years in the city were a very small part of a long tradition of attempting to have a place, that accepts people, um, that you know where you can work and live with dignity. And I'm just not sure there's as much of that in San Francisco as there was. They've been chipping away over the years, and
Mhm.
every time I go back to the city now, I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's really, yeah, I've watched it, decline over the years. I'm still in the city. But there are people out there, there's still motivated young people, of course, and, people who really, if not at the highest levels of the government, then just the community themselves are still there. And,
I certainly, you're right, and I shouldn't take away from the folks there
mm,
now. I'm familiar with,
yeah.
um, some of the work going on, and some of the people uh, doing it. Although there's a whole new generation, right? There are
Yeah.
folks who are progressive politicians, sort of, I called myself a progressive politician back in the day.
Mhm.
But there are, progressive politicians I've never met in San Francisco. And so, that work continues. It's just the field now is, I think, a harder one than it was even in
Yeah.
my years, which might have been harder than, in a previous generation.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the arc of that, how that went, but yeah, it does look like certainly I know since the mid-90s, it's just gotten more and more challenging, to do things. Although, really, this is just an example because, I haven't been really plugged into this activist community around here the last few years, but I did notice when they sent ICE to San Francisco when, they were sending them to all the different cities and how just watching the videos that people had shot and watching them from LA and then watching all the ones I could get from San Francisco. In San Francisco, the level of organization was astounding. I mean, it was really impressive. How organized the people were and how they were on all the different blocks and they had different groups and they could notify each other and then a bunch of so if they saw them, a bunch of people would arrive. And also interesting how their method of basically just talking to or yelling at and shaming the ICE officers for what they were doing was effective. And I on many videos watched them. They had the officers running away from them, trying to get away from them, when they were outnumbered, which was that's really impressive, you know? So,
Mm.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
um,
I don't have any unique San Francisco stories to share, but
yeah,
nationally, watching
mhm,
the, resistance to, just this reign of terror from ICE, uh, you
mhm,
know, obviously, Minneapolis and
yeah,
Portland and LA and, all of these places. Uh, that's been I think, one of the brightest political notes that we've seen in sort of this latest round of, the Trump era. And
mhm,
so, and I will say this about San Francisco. I knew in my years in the city that San Francisco was a special place and worth fighting for. But it probably
mhm,
wasn't until I left San Francisco.
mm,
I do political work in the state of Nevada now.
yeah,
And just there are good people everywhere, and there are good people in the state of Nevada who are doing really important, good work. But the infrastructure is just not there in the way that it is, or that I was used to in San Francisco, where there are community organizations everywhere. There are nonprofits everywhere. There are, people just coming together, and you just don't see that the same way in other places. And so San Francisco
Mhm,
is a special place, and
mhm.
appreciate your observation on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it really is. It's, even though things have degraded, I think my point was that it's still special and diverse and huge, like, by comparison to what it was, but like you said, comparing it to someplace else, I mean, it's still pretty amazing. It's good to do that. I think it's valuable to not, become disheartened that it's not as good as it used to be, or not winning as many fights as we used to, at least politically.
Agreed.
So
You don't want
yeah.
to be that guy who says, I guess I am that guy, but you don't want to be that guy who says, back in my day, this, um, it,
It was so much,
just in
yeah.
terms of, you know, the main issue that I worked on in terms of
Mm.
affordability. It's, I know there are ebbs and
Oof.
flows in, you know, dot-com booms and, little busts and that sort of thing. And obviously, the COVID years um, it had a big impact everywhere. But now
Yeah.
with kind of AI, the stories come across my feeds about, um, what's happening with rents in the city, and just helped my son, who's starting his senior year at San Francisco State, move in to an apartment in Park Merced, and
Mhm.
even the rents there um, are pretty high, and so it's a struggle for you know folks who are not making those AI type salaries just to afford it. And I think when I talk about changes in the city, that's sort of what's in back of my mind driving it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's become less affordable. The rents, like my rent, for instance, is just continuing to rise. And this is I'm in the forgotten outside part of the city no one even knows exists, but it's still expensive here, you know? So, yeah, it's something one would think something will have to give at some point. I can't keep going forever. But I think what I'm seeing too is there's this endless construction of apartments here and on the peninsula, just all around the Bay Area. And though I haven't been in them myself, from what I've read from my research, it seems that a lot of the apartments and even houses are simply being purchased for investment purposes, and there's no one living in them. So, and I can't get any exact statistics on that, but I think it's having an impact on the prices.
I can
So,
remember engaging on that issue back in the 2000s,
mhm,
on in back in my San Francisco years. So yeah, I'm sure there's a good bit of that. And
yeah,
there's a pretty, I don't know if it's healthy, but there's a pretty vibrant debate around, you know, can you build your way out of the housing crisis? I'm a believer in rent control, and I think
yeah,
um, for any of life's basic necessities, there needs to be regulation around it, and it doesn't seem to me that building your way out of an affordability crisis is going to work. Um, and so
no,
when I was on the board, I prioritized investment in affordable housing, strengthening tenant protections, and that sort of thing. And I got a lot of pushback uh, for being strident in my views on it. Uh, but
mhm.
looking back, I think I was probably right, and I'm glad I was strident. Maybe should have been even more so if that is possible. So, um, but no regrets.
If you're looking for practical help creating healthier relationships, understanding your emotions, and creating lasting changes in your life, I also work with people one on one. You'll find more information in the description. Yeah. I appreciated your stridence, as you say back then. That was is impressive. Your commitment and ability to really just push forward. So there's one thing I think I haven't asked you about. I don't think I had interviewed you since this happened, but if you don't want to answer this question, feel free not to answer it. But uh, your day as mayor,
Yeah, acting mayor.
mm, acting mayor, yeah.
Yep. Interestingly enough, though, in San Francisco, when the mayor leaves the state, a member of the board of supervisors, typically the president, although the mayor can
Hmm.
appoint uh, any of the 11 members of the board to serve as acting mayor, um, serves as mayor and has all the powers of the mayor, right? Like if
Hmm.
there's a crisis, um, you know, little bit of history. Do you remember when the oil tanker ran into the Bay Bridge? That was
Yeah,
a big, um, a big issue and one
yeah,
that needed
it's a
the
big deal.
city's attention. The mayor at the time was out of state. And I think Bevan Dufty, former colleague of mine, was the acting mayor and had a lot of, responsibilities that, in those days
Hmm.
with that managing that crisis. So, back when Willie Brown was the mayor and I was budget chair, we negotiated a budget deal. It was highly contentious in the process, as
Hmm.
it typically was during that June budget season. But we reached an agreement. I wanted to save a bunch of health services, in the center city, and I probably had mayor special assistants on the chopping block. Um,
Hmm.
but ultimately we cut a deal, and uh, then I got a phone call from the mayor's chief of staff afterwards saying the mayor was going out of town and did I want to, serve for a day as acting mayor? And I said, sure, sounds good. And as soon as I hung up that call, I sort of hollered over to my legislative aide and said, we need to figure out all of the powers of the acting mayor that the mayor can undo. And it turned out that at that time, there were pending appointments to the Public Utilities Commission. This is a very important commission in San Francisco. The Hetch Hetchy system
Hmm. Yeah.
is under the PUC. That includes water, that includes a whole bunch of power generation and, um, service to, I forget how many million customers, but a lot.
Yeah, it's
Um,
critical.
and the mayor was, looking to appoint some patently unqualified
Hmm.
appointees to the position. And I'm like, well, these are appointments that the mayor makes, and they're fixed term appointments. I figured out a couple of appointments to make, including one who was the former uh, national chair of the Sierra Club. Uh, so, uh,
Mm.
uh, you know, serious environmentalist. There wasn't an environmentalist on the PUC at the time, so made those appointments. One of the two ended up sticking. It was quite controversial. I think the mayor accused me of some sort of sedition or
Yeah,
that sort
he
of thing.
wasn't
But
happy.
um,
He wasn't
so
happy.
he was on a trip to China. He came back and attempted to undo it all, but one of the two stuck. Yeah, that was that was my day as mayor for the day. Tried to make it count.
Yeah, that was yeah. I really saw that as a positive thing, and I've always wanted to thank you for that, and something actually got done. It was good to see that.
Well, thanks. I was happy to do it.
Yeah. When did you get interested in politics? When did you first start paying attention to the public sphere?
But I'm not sure if I've ever been like interested in politics,
Mm.
right? Like I
Yeah,
just
well, yeah,
I
I can't stand it either, but
I
social awareness. So,
the I remember, when I was sort of an established elected official, oftentimes you'd have people come to you to talking about how they were interested in running for office. And more
Mhm.
often than not, I found myself attempting to talk them out of it. Um,
Mhm.
and not that public service is bad, but um, running for office is one of many different ways in which you can serve the public.
Mhm.
And I don't even think it's the best way. It's certainly not the best way to start um, service to the public. Engaging in your community. The conversation we had about like San Francisco's rich tradition of kind of community togetherness and activism. Like for me, that's the place to start. That's where I got my start. So
Mhm.
I'm not exactly sure the genesis for me personally, but I've always had a pretty strong conviction around social, racial, and economic justice.
Mhm.
Some of that came from doing community service work. When I was younger, um, I remember the summer of my first year in college, I was recruited to go and do a summer program in Philadelphia working with homeless people, where the idea was we were going to team up college students with homeless people and take over vacant houses to, to actually physically end homelessness in Philadelphia. It didn't exactly work out like that. We did do some
Mhm.
housing occupations, but um, I certainly was politicized through that work. And then, when I came to San Francisco when I was 21, in 1993, specifically to work out of the Coalition on Homelessness in San Francisco's Tenderloin. And so, kind of that work there and sort of my related housing work in residential hotels in the Mission District. And then, this whole .com thing that happened where,
Mhm.
we saw that big wave of evictions in the mid to late 90s. I was evicted actually um,
No.
from my apartment in the Mission on an owner move in. And so, but a lot of folks who didn't have the ability to kind of hang on like I did, um, were run out of the city that time, and that was when uh, I wouldn't say I decided. I would say it was decided that I was going to run for office. It was a group effort. I think I was sort of I was young. I was maybe the youngest one in the room and the one with the least number of skeletons in the closet. So they're like, "Chris, you do it." So,
Oh, interesting.
so I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, you're doing it." So that was how I first ran for office. And the fun part about my first run for office is we sort of had to make it all up as we went along. And certainly, I had
Yeah.
years of community organizing experience and a lot of friends and allies in the struggle to tap into. But there wasn't like you see out there now with the Mamdanis who have sort of the DSA kind of um, you know organizational support. We didn't really
Yeah.
have that back in the 90s. So you just sort of created these campaigns and started to engage and build from scratch. So that
Yeah. Yeah.
2000 run was pretty exciting, and um, you know, a lot of people were involved.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gonna take a lot of people, huh? Yeah, I think that determines the success of it too, how many people really jump on board.
I'm like in the end, I remember I was 27. I was 28 when I was elected, 27 when I started
Mhm.
running. And I can remember even in the Bay Guardian, which was, sort of the newspaper that covered progressive politics um,
Yeah.
more than others. Um, I wasn't totally written off, but as a candidate, but I certainly wasn't a favored candidate. I wasn't Willie Brown's candidate. I wasn't even endorsed by
No.
Tom Amiano, who um, I was friendly with and had worked on the Amiano campaign for mayor in '99 as a volunteer, but I
Mhm.
wasn't his chosen candidate. Um, his operation actually tried to get me to drop out of the race, which I
Oh,
didn't. Um, so I was sort of very independent and wasn't supposed to win. And my response to that was, I mean, yeah, I probably won't win unless I get more votes than the other candidates. So it's just sort of a,
yeah. Yeah.
it was just sort of like just go get more votes than the other candidates, and that's what we did. And so yeah, you're right. I shouldn't win, except that I got more votes. So that's
Yeah, that's
that's
how it's
kind of quaint.
determined
That's how
theoretically.
elections used to work. Hmm.
Yeah, the votes have to actually get to being counted. Politics is very uncertain. Things can happen. It's really hard to predict. Yeah, I remember with about politics being I'm interested in communities and helping to improve standard of living for people and had worked for an activist for quite a few years and had the radio show and I was active with KPFA and just because there was really not enough people running, I ran for in 2004 for school board and I didn't win, but after going through the running process, um, and I remember they said, run again. And all the people I was running with, they all ran again. I did not. And they all eventually won, like in the second or third shot, and then went to the Board of Soups. It was so grueling. I like, this is just going to destroy me, the campaigning part. So I just decided not to because thought, I could be more effective somewhere else.
Campaigning is
Mm-hmm.
hard. Um, so I ran three
Mm-hmm.
campaigns, the 2001, and then I was up again in 2002, and then in 2006 was my last
Mm-hmm.
run for the board. And the campaigns are hard, but what I liked about the campaigns is that you sort of were going out there and were kind of the actor. You got to build the campaign. You got to
Mm-hmm.
talk about the issues that you wanted to talk about in the campaign. And yeah, I mean, during campaigns, you have, opponents and, the press and folks trying to paint you one way or the other, but
Yeah.
you have the capacity to, choose to respond to that or not. To go, um, talk to, you know, your constituents, your voters, directly. You have the power to run your own, if you are able to raise money and, public financing is now a thing in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
and implement it during, um, my tenure there. But, uh, you know, you have the power to run your own paid communications. And you have the power to engage others. And so
Mm-hmm.
I liked campaigns a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
the holding of the office, um, I found that much sort of more difficult. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically is not the right word, but there was certainly you have a forum and where you can speak, but you're
Mm-hmm.
much more of a target. For me, uh,
Yeah.
holding off, and I could have not said crazy stuff that I said at the time and been less of a target, I guess.
Yeah.
But going and sort
What's
of
the
doing
point?
it the way that I wanted to do it,
Mm-hmm.
sort of speaking truth to power and fighting for those who are less fortunate, you get very powerful enemies. And so I always relished campaign time because
Mm.
that was when we could go and and get our message out more forcefully, more aggressively. And I attempted during my last 4 years in office to create some structure to go and be more campaign like while I was in office. It's just very difficult to do. Um, so,
Mm.
so just the flip side there on that. Campaigning is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
campaigning is difficult. It's grueling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It
for
was
me, it
grueling.
was nice to be younger. So I was 27 when I launched
Yeah.
my first campaign, and so I ran campaigns between the ages of 27 and 33, 34 years old. So, um, That's it's a little easier at those ages than at the current age.
Yeah, yeah, my first one, I was 40, so might be a little bit harder.
It's kind of like bartending. When I bartended in my 20s, it was fun. My
Yeah.
joints didn't hurt, and then I found myself bartending in my 40s, and just much more difficult.
Yeah. Not quite the same. Yeah. Yeah, but you're right, you can really get a message out there. I did enjoy that part of being able to talk to everybody and just have a huge crowd and do Q&A. I love to do that. We'd be able to answer all the people's questions about things and kinda just let people know what was going on in certain areas if they didn't, or give them a different perspective on it. And, yeah, and I think for mine personally, it was kind of strategic. I was there because I was the most left person running that was a serious candidate. So I think it allowed the other progressives to look more mainstream or center.
I I was very aware of kind of holding the left flank uh, during my time on the board of supervisors, and you mentioned Matt Gonzalez. So
Yeah.
Matt Gonzalez was elected in 2000, the year I was, and Green Party member, and so we kind of shared the left flank. Tom Amiano, who had held down the left flank for a number of years, sort of got more room when kind of Matt and I came in sort of on his left. Um, but I can remember uh, talking with folks about how part of what we were doing in San Francisco politics and in City Hall was, opening the doors and windows for others to access the building. And, part of the reason why, I ran the first time is sort of during that first .com, and we
Mhm.
were organizing in the mission, against like live work lofts, against these big kind of .com office projects in the mission. And we would turn out 500 or more residents to community meetings, to hearings at City Hall. We'd show up with 500 people, and the supervisors, the vote was all juiced, all done before we got there.
Mhm.
So the supervisors are ducking meetings, their doors are locked. 500 people are in the board chamber saying, vote this down, and then they vote it up 8-3. That's not the kind of city hall that I wanted to see. So I'm like, we gotta unlock the
Yeah.
doors, right? We gotta open the doors and windows so people from the communities can get in here because it's supposed to be you know, the people's house. And
Yeah.
and so part of you know part of the method to the madness of my years on the board was figuring out how to create as much space as possible. You could think of it as sort of being, you know, in football, American football, you think of it as being like a blocker, downfield, getting downfield and trying to clear space for folks to come in behind you. And I think to some extent, um, we were successful in creating that space.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's hard to say exactly, right? Because you don't have the
Mhm.
sort of the alternative version of events, um, but I think you're right. Some of it is just creating space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was successful, and I think it's really important in America. American politics is so it's just this duality with the 2 parties, and both of them been drifting to the right over the last 40, 50 years, and in Europe, other countries, and in the United States in the past, there were multiple political parties because just to be able to represent different philosophies and different people's points of view. And right now, I think we're really a disservice to have only two political points of view because in reality, there's myriads. There's as many really as there are people. But the more parties you have, if you're going to have a party system, if you're not going to do it individually, I mean, look at it. There's all these actual philosophies. There's endless different kinds of socialism, of communism, beyond that, anarchism. Uh, And it's really this really wide spectrum, but in the US, it's just reduced to this tiny, narrow margin. So the more I think that could be pushed out, just the better it is for people's ability to be able to uh, express who they are and express it in a political way through influencing the powers that be in the government that's, like you were saying, supposedly theirs.
Yeah, I agree. We'd be better off if there
Yeah.
was a system that allowed for, you know, more parties and sort of more
Hmm.
diversity of thought. Though right now, I would say that it does seem like the action is in a battle for the parties, and what
Hmm.
there's a very real, very live debate and fight in the Democratic Party right now over
Oh, yeah.
uh, its vision for the future. A lot of it is generational, and I think it's long past time for that kind of internal debate. And I would say, you know, San Francisco is, not on the vanguard of this at the moment. But over the
Hmm.
years, I think, you've seen that kind of discussion even within the Democratic Party um, in San Francisco. I think nationally, we'll benefit from this dynamic and this discussion that's happening.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think San Francisco has been important in the past, being a city where you're usually the mayor and the whole board of supervisors and almost all the elected officials are all Democrats. So it allows you to see the different shades within that party. So you really can see, there's a whole spectrum there. That's what I was saying. It'd be interesting. It'd be nice if they were divided up into different camps, but they are in reality, but we just don't. They're not labeled that way. So because you'll see on the board of soups, there's the people that are highly conservative, people that are maybe what Republicans used to be, and then people that are a little more moderate, and people that are liberal, and people that are actually progressive. So there's really, I don't know, you could divide it any way you wanted, but certainly at least like four different camps of people on the board of supervisors. And I've watched them, kind of watch it ebb and flow and kind of come back to more liberal and then go back again. But you do get to see that the diversity within that party, and that there is not agreement, within that party.
No, it's interesting being doing political work in a purple state. So I do my political work
Hmm.
mostly in Nevada now, where I'm the political director for the state education association. And there is a good bit of you know we're supportive of the Democratic candidate for governor who's trying to oust the Republican incumbent governor right now in Nevada. But probably most of my energy and time is still spent battling other Democrats, just
Hmm.
around what vision we're carrying forward in terms of in that party. So in the San Francisco sort of model, um, you know, maybe not, may not be transferable exactly, but there are elements of it everywhere.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That I think is really critical nationally too. It's a really important battle for that party because it's going to take that party, you know, getting rid of that old guard with the old ideas to be able to really be successful. Um, and, consistently. And from what I can see, this is just, predicting things in politics, but uh, that change could be, the thing that does it, that really throws it over the top and allows people to really start to have a say. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I hope so.
There's been changes. I love like Bernie Sanders, for instance. They had defined socialism as it was just the worst thing. They're trying to do it again now with communism. More crazy way, but uh, but Bernie really single handedly changed that word and made it okay. Most people are see it positively. Most people, not even just in this area, but I think throughout the country, it's not the negative thing it used to be. And I think that's pretty good progress.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can remember a couple of times in office where there was sort of a discussion of socialism and, was I socialist?
Hmm.
And my answer to that was, well, I support public education, public health care, public housing, and, giving the benefit to the little guy. So call it whatever you want.
Hmm.
Pretty much my response to that, which like,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't really have time for your labels. We're fighting for
Yeah.
housing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
that's
true.
all. That's socialist. That's socialism.
It's a real slippery word because nobody really knows what it means because it can mean almost anything. So, I mean, it means government support, but the degrees of it are limitless. So,
Eh,
does that mean if you have a fire department, you're socialist? You know?
Yeah, I mean, you get into these descriptors which aren't entirely helpful. Sometimes they're very useful. You need them. Sometimes they're not helpful. Like, uh, you know, uh, do you need critical race theory? Maybe in academica, you do on the ground. We just fought for racial justice, right? We just said
Hmm.
racism is wrong. And there's racism in society and in systems, right? Um, so I sometimes the nomenclature hurts, and so you know this latest, I guess the Trump folks and the right or Fox News or whatever is on, this latest thing going after whoever it is, the Mamdani success is socialist or communist, and I think you know Mayor Mamdani's doing the right thing. He's just sort of delivering these policies, which, by the way, are socialist, but are also extremely popular with an overwhelming majority of New Yorkers. Right? That's the correct, I think, political way to deal with, the talking heads who are just gonna, or the political operatives who are just gonna, throw these, um, smear campaigns out there. Is you just go and
Hmm.
deliver the programs that are popular. And my day job is I fight for public schools. The good news is guess what's extremely popular with an overwhelming majority of the public schools.
Yeah.
One of the most popular things. So you can ride that a pretty long way. And also,
Yeah.
public schools are incredibly important. So people get that.
Yeah. I think there's a disconnect between what people actually want, what they know they want, and who they might vote for because they've demonized some word or some group. And the same people that maybe support public education will vote against it because if they've been told it's socialist or communist or something. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that I think there's been so much of this, oh, the mischaracterizing the lies, there's such an onslaught of it now and demonizing of people and things and just everything that I'm hoping it reaches just a level where it just falls apart, where people stop believing it. And it seems like that might be starting to happen. There's signs for sure.
There's certainly a
Uh,
generational shift
yeah.
that's happening, and it's about time.
Yeah, it is. Been waiting a long time, working at it a long time. How do you see the political situation now as compared to when you were, 25 years ago when you're in San Francisco? Like, how different is it for you personally? Like, how does it affect you?
Hmm. I'm not sure I totally understand the question. So if I'm
Mm,
going the wrong way, please sort of funnel me back to
mhm,
where you're think you're going. I mean, I don't know. 25 years ago, uh, you know, George W. Bush was the president,
Mhm.
right? Just elected. And we thought that was bad, war in Iraq. It's significantly worse now, um, from the presidential political
Mhm.
perspective. You talked about, you know, the ICE occupations. I mean, that was not that INS and ICE weren't a thing 25 years ago. They were, but you know, just the intensity of it, just the mean spiritedness of it. Uh, it's next level. It's I think a full step closer to fascism, and that
Mhm.
is a dangerous place. As someone who considers themselves anti-fascist, as I think most, I hope most people in this country are against fascism. Um, it's concerning. Uh, I think economically, um, I've now two college age kids, right? One who's a senior at San Francisco State, one who's going to be starting at USF this week. Um, you know, their opportunities out there in the world seem more limited. It should be the other way around, right? Their opportunities should
Mhm.
be expanded. So, that's a concern for me personally, for my kids. Um, eh, my wife and I frequently discuss the prospects of our son graduating from college and moving back in to live with us, right? That's a more normal thing now, I think, than it was. It wasn't
Oh,
unheard
yeah.
of 25 years ago, but um, I think it's, you know, statistically and culturally more of a thing now. So, that's been on our minds. And so I think there are changes that are kind of dark and concerning, and there are changes that are limiting and concerning. You know, uh, but you sort of have to look back at those, you know, more positive or more hopeful or inspirational moments, like that fight back against ICE, um,
Mhm.
in particular, in Minneapolis. Um, just inspirational organizing that happened, and
Mhm.
it was everyday people. I mean, it was activist networks and community organizers and uh, you know community-based institutions involved in that, but it was a lot of everyday people too. And so, hopefully, there's hope, and we talked about the shifts with the younger generation. So, not that I'm counting on my kids specifically, but my kids' generation, they'll have a lot of work to do, but I think they can do it.
Mhm.
You just gotta have hope.
Yeah, and I think, like you touched on this too, it seems like that though things do look, very dark. A lot of the activity that has gone on, the quasi-fascist, fascist activity, has resulted in really bringing people closer together. If you look at what's happened with ICE going into cities, the people there meet their neighbors that they've never met, and all these people are organizing and becoming a solid group. And this is happening a lot of places because of that. And it really, really helped bring people together. And it's like, I mean, just strategically, it looks like, well, you went in there and made a lot of people angry and got them to all organize, and now they're ready. You know, they're seasoned now. So they're going to be lot harder to deal with in the future. And this happened in Portland. I mean, this happened so many places, LA. And here it's like watching them basically get run out of the city by activists is like, what were they thinking? It's like they don't really know what they're doing. They don't really have a clear strategy, and that's good, for the people. And if the people are organized and do understand what they're doing, that's and not just on that level, but, with elections and in so many areas, things are getting activated and turned on, and very positive things are happening everywhere. That's I can see that just as a reaction to the darkness. So, I
I
think there's
agree.
hope.
I mean, in the end, community necessarily has to be the answer, and that's
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
And hopefully, it's strong enough.
Yeah. I'm gonna say it is. It seems to be. It seems to be. Let me ask you a couple of questions to move towards wrapping up here. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you tell yourself before you, started being active, politically active?
Jeez.
Is
um,
there anything
is there some sort of Back to the Future time space loop
Yeah.
problem that I need to be concerned about? Because maybe I just avoid that entirely. I'll say, uh, I don't know. You sort of,
Or what would you tell a young person now, I guess is
you know,
what that
you,
question really said.
I'm, I'm a believer in sort of learning by doing, and
Mhm,
um, I think pretty happy at least in that part of my life
mhm,
with just having gone out and acted on my beliefs and my convictions. And so, hopefully, in terms of creating space for others, that's helped others who've come along and seen the example. I mean, I know that oftentimes it appeared that my political opponents or detractors wanted to use me as an example of what not to do, but I attempted to keep on keeping on anyway. And yeah, happy I did that, and I hope others can just act on their beliefs and do what's right. And
mhm,
there's all sorts of corny slogans like "being the change," uh, that sort of thing. But you know, it's real. Like you can go, and when you work in community and alongside others, you can go and do things that are important. So that's the lesson I'd like to leave.
okay. Can you think of something that Americans, since we're in this political system, should know about the system, should know about, what's something that would benefit people from understanding that they don't currently understand?
We're finally getting to the whole topic of your podcast.
Yep.
I like in terms of what folks should know, like this was a hard question. Maybe what
Mhm,
got me sort of spun around a little bit. I don't know if there's sort of a teachable experience or moment.
mm,
You got to find your people, build community with them, engage. Don't let the powers that be, you know, tell you can't do it or stop you from doing it. You just kind of power through, figure it out. Um, that's not always, but oftentimes the best way to move forward. Um, there's
mm,
no, I mean, I don't know. In politics, there's a lot of bullshit. But there's no reason why if we build together, we can't win and win
mhm,
the things that we need and win the things that we want. There's a lot of obstacles. Some very stiff resistance and opposition, but we still have the numbers. And you know, like I said, I wasn't supposed to win my race unless I got more votes than the other candidates. Um, you go and put the numbers together. You can, they'll throw increasingly strong obstacles against you, and you just sort of not need to navigate them. But I think you're right. There's cause for hope, and we can win.
Yeah, I agree with you saying community, basically working together, not being isolated. You know, I mean, I saw Kurt Vonnegut speak at UC Irvine decades ago, and he repeated this many times: "Get a gang, get a gang." And the older I've become, the more clearly I can see what he was saying, and that really organization, community, family, supporting each other is really that's what it's all about, and that's what gives you power and success.
That's it.
So yeah. All right, Chris, do you have any last words?
No, not really. I appreciate you reaching out and uh, thinking of this sort of washed up old San Francisco politician to come and chat for a little bit. Mm, looking forward to following the program.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you being on the show. I had a good time exploring some of these issues with you. So thanks again.
Take care.
If today's conversation resonated with you and you'd like to explore working together, I've included a link below where you can learn more about coaching and schedule a complimentary discovery session. Hi, guys. If you could like, subscribe, follow, share, that way I can help bring you more information and better podcasts in the future. Thanks.